I never thought I'd be in a situation like this, especially with my boss, Mark. Let me start by telling you about our working relationship. I've been at the marketing firm for about 2 years now, and Mark has been my direct supervisor for most of that time. He's in his mid-30s, always professionally dressed, and maintains what I thought was a strictly professional relationship with all his employees. I'm 27, openly gay at work, and while everyone has been accepting, I've always kept my personal and professional lives separate. The day it happened was particularly hectic. We'd been working on a major campaign launch for weeks, and the final presentation to the client was scheduled for the following morning. The office was a whirlwind of activity, designers finalizing graphics, copywriters polishing scripts, and account managers running through checklists. By the time 9 p.m. rolled around, most people had left, but Mark and I were still hunched over our computers, perfecting the presentation slides. I remember rubbing my eyes, feeling the strain of staring at the screen for too long. "I think we've done all we can tonight," Mark said, stretching his arms above his head. "We should get some rest before tomorrow." I nodded in agreement, saving my files and shutting down my computer. That's when it happened, the moment that would lead to one of the most confusing nights of my life. "How are you getting home?" Mark asked casually as we walked toward the elevator. I explained that I usually take the bus, but at this hour, I'd probably call a rideshare. He frowned slightly. "That seems unnecessary. I'm heading in that direction anyway. Let me drive you." His offer seemed innocent enough, and after a long day, the thought of getting home faster was appealing. I accepted without much thought, not realizing what I was getting myself into. Let me explain why this offer felt so unexpected. In the 2 years I'd worked under Mark, he had never made such a personal gesture. Our relationship had always been friendly but professional. We occasionally chatted about weekend plans or shared lunch orders, but never spent time together outside of work functions. There was an invisible line that neither of us had crossed until that night. As we walked to the parking garage, I felt a strange nervousness building in my stomach. Was this just a kind gesture from a boss who recognized a hard day's work? Or was there something more to it? I pushed these thoughts aside, telling myself I was overthinking a simple act of kindness. Mark's car was sleek and immaculate, a black Audi that reflected his meticulous personality. As I settled into the passenger seat, I noticed the leather interior smelled faintly of his cologne, a scent I'd become familiar with during our close work sessions. He turned on some soft music as we pulled out of the garage and asked me for my address. I gave him the cross streets of my apartment building in the West Side neighborhood, explaining that it was about a 15-minute drive from downtown. The first few minutes of the drive were filled with comfortable small talk about the presentation. We discussed potential client questions and how we'd address them. Mark seemed relaxed, one hand on the steering wheel, occasionally glancing at me when making a point. I started to relax too, thinking perhaps I had been reading too much into the situation. As we approached the highway exit that would lead to my neighborhood, I casually mentioned, "We'll want to take this exit coming up." Mark nodded but didn't slow down. We sailed past the exit, and I figured he might be taking an alternate route. "I usually go that way," I said, trying not to sound critical. "But maybe you know a better way?" "Oh, I missed it. Sorry about that," Mark replied with a smile that didn't quite match his apologetic words. "There's another way we can go. Just enjoying the conversation, I guess." Something about his tone made me pause. It didn't sound like he was genuinely sorry for missing the exit. In fact, it almost seemed deliberate. But why would he intentionally miss my exit? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was unfamiliar with this part of town, or perhaps he really was distracted by our conversation. 10 minutes later, we were approaching another turn that would lead to my neighborhood. "We can turn right at this light," I suggested, pointing ahead. Mark acknowledged with a nod, but then sailed through the intersection without turning. My heart rate increased slightly. Once could be a mistake, but twice? "We just missed another turn," I said, more directly this time. "Are you familiar with this area?" Mark chuckled, a sound that sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. "Not particularly. Why don't you be my guide? Or we could just drive around a bit longer. It's a nice night, isn't it?" That's when it hit me. He was deliberately extending our time together. The realization sent a mix of emotions through me: confusion, nervousness, and if I'm being honest, a flutter of excitement that I immediately tried to suppress. This was my boss, after all, a straight boss, as far as I knew. He'd mentioned an ex-girlfriend once during a team lunch, and I'd never seen any indication that he might be interested in men. As we continued driving, now clearly circling back toward areas we'd already passed, I found myself recalling moments from our work relationship in a new light. There was the time he'd insisted on working late with me on a proposal, even though it wasn't his project, or how he always seemed to find reasons to stop by my desk throughout the day. The way his hand would occasionally rest on my shoulder during meetings, lingering just a moment longer than necessary. Had I been missing signs all along? Or was I now creating a narrative that wasn't there? The car fell silent for a moment, the only sound the soft music from the speakers and the hum of the engine. I looked out the window, noticing we were now heading in the complete opposite direction of my apartment. We were driving along the river, a scenic route that people often took for leisurely drives, not for getting someone home after a long workday. "Mark," I finally said, gathering my courage, "I think we're going the wrong way. My apartment is back in the other direction." I tried to keep my voice casual, not wanting to sound accusatory or anxious. He slowed the car slightly, glancing at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I know," he said simply. "I thought we could take the scenic route, unless you're in a hurry to get home." There it was, a direct acknowledgement that this detour was intentional. My mouth felt dry as I tried to formulate a response. "I'm not in a particular rush," I heard myself saying, though a voice in my head was screaming questions. "What is happening? What does he want? What do I want?" Mark smiled, looking relieved at my response. "Good. I've been wanting to talk to you outside of the office for a while now." He pulled the car into a small, overlook area by the river, where the city lights reflected on the water. He turned off the engine, but left the music playing softly. My heart was pounding now. This felt surreal, like a scene from a movie rather than my actual life. "What did you want to talk about?" I asked, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. Mark turned slightly in his seat to face me. "I've been struggling with something, and I'm not exactly sure how to approach it, especially given our professional relationship." He paused, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen countless times when he was working through a difficult problem at work. "The thing is," he continued, "I found myself thinking about you. Not just as an employee or colleague, but—" He trailed off, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. The car suddenly felt very small, the air between us charged with unspoken possibilities. I'd never seen Mark vulnerable before. He was always the confident boss, the one with all the answers. This hesitant, almost shy version of him was new territory. "I don't know if I've been reading signals wrong," he said, "but sometimes I feel like there might be something between us. More than just a professional connection." I was stunned. Not only was my straight boss apparently not so straight, but he was suggesting he had feelings for me. The power dynamics at play made this incredibly complicated. He was still my supervisor, the person who evaluated my performance and influenced my career trajectory. "I'm not sure what to say," I admitted, which was the honest truth. "This is unexpected. I know, and I'm sorry if I've made you uncomfortable," Mark said quickly. "The last thing I want is for you to feel pressured in any way. That's why I've hesitated to say anything for so long. But tonight, working so closely with you, I just couldn't keep pretending." I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. "I thought you were straight," I said finally, addressing the most confusing aspect of the situation. Mark gave a small laugh. "I've dated women mostly, but I've known I was bisexual since college. I just don't talk about it at work. The corporate world can still be pretty conservative." This revelation changed everything. I found myself reevaluating our past interactions, wondering if what I'd dismissed as friendly behavior had actually been subtle flirtation all along. "I need to be clear about something," I said, finding my voice. "The fact that you're my boss makes this complicated. There's an inherent power imbalance that can't be ignored." Mark nodded seriously. "You're absolutely right. That's another reason I've hesitated. I would never want to use my position to influence you or make you feel obligated in any way." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "If this is something you'd want to explore, we would need to address that. Maybe I could talk to HR about having you transferred to another team." The fact that he had already thought about the ethical implications was reassuring. It showed he had considered this beyond just an impulsive attraction. "I don't even know if you feel anything similar," Mark added, looking suddenly vulnerable again. "And if you don't, I promise things won't change at work. I value you too much as an employee to let this affect your career." I sat there, looking at the man I'd known professionally for 2 years, seeing him in an entirely new light. Was I attracted to Mark? I had to admit that I'd always found him handsome and respected his intelligence and work ethic. There had been moments when our hands had brushed while working on presentations, or when our eyes had met across the conference table, that had given me pause. But I had always dismissed these feelings as inappropriate and unprofessional. "I think I need some time to process this," I said finally. "It's a lot to take in." Mark nodded, seeming to respect my need for space. "Of course, I've kind of ambushed you with this. Take all the time you need." He started the car again. "Let me get you home now, for real this time." As we drove toward my apartment, taking the direct route this time, we fell into a silence that was surprisingly comfortable given the conversation we'd just had. My mind was racing, considering possibilities I had never allowed myself to entertain before. When we pulled up outside my building, Mark put the car in park but kept the engine running. "I meant what I said. No pressure, and nothing changes at work regardless of what you decide." I nodded, appreciating his reassurance. "Thank you for being honest with me. I'll think about everything." As I reached for the door handle, Mark spoke again. "For what it's worth, you're not just a great employee. You're one of the most genuine people I've ever met. That's what drew me to you initially, your authenticity." His words touched me more than I expected. In a world where everyone was trying to project a certain image, especially in our industry, being seen for who I truly was felt rare and valuable. I got out of the car with a simple goodnight, watching as Mark drove away. Standing there on the sidewalk, I felt like my world had shifted on its axis. Tomorrow, we would present to the client as professionals. We would maintain our workplace personas. But something had changed between us. A door had been opened that couldn't be closed again. As I climbed the stairs to my apartment, I found myself smiling. Whatever happened next, there was something exhilarating about the unexpected turn my life had taken, much like the unexpected turns during our drive. I had no idea where this road might lead, but for the first time in a long time, I was curious to find out. The next morning arrived with the familiar buzz of my alarm, but everything felt different. As I prepared for the client presentation, I rehearsed not only my talking points, but also how I would interact with Mark. Would things be awkward? Would we pretend nothing had happened? When I arrived at the office, Mark was already in the conference room, setting up the presentation. He greeted me with the same professional courtesy he always did, but there was a new awareness between us, a shared secret that colored our interaction with subtle undertones. The presentation went flawlessly. We moved through our practiced parts with the ease of a team that had worked closely together for years. If anything, there seemed to be an enhanced synergy between us, as if our personal revelation had somehow strengthened our professional connection. After the clients left, expressing their enthusiasm for our campaign, Mark caught my eye across the room and gave me a small, private smile. In that moment, I knew that whatever path I chose, whether to explore this unexpected connection or to maintain our professional boundaries, our relationship had evolved into something more complex and potentially more rewarding than I could have imagined. As weeks passed, Mark and I navigated our new awareness of each other with care and respect. We had several more conversations, each one peeling back layers and building understanding. Eventually, we did approach HR about restructuring the reporting relationship, and with time, we began dating properly, outside the shadows of missed turns and circular drives. Looking back now, I'm amazed at how one detour, both literal and figurative, changed the course of my life. That night when my straight boss offered to drive me home, missed my turn on purpose, and kept circling, he wasn't just extending a car ride. He was creating space for possibility, for honesty, for the beginning of something neither of us had anticipated but both of us, as it turned out, had wanted. Sometimes the most meaningful journeys aren't about reaching a destination quickly, but about taking the scenic route, even when that means circling back, missing turns, and finding yourself somewhere unexpected. In the end, it's not about where you're going, but who you're traveling with and what you discover along the way. Total _char_count, 13,475.